Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast. Um, I am getting ready to get started. I will tell you, for those who come here a lot and see my trainings, I got some new tool setups, and so I got to get used to it a little bit. If you see anything as we go along and you can give me tips afterwards, please go ahead and do that. I'm glad to see people already engaging in chat. I appreciate that. Let me turn off one of these captions, and then I think I'll leave the other one going for a few seconds as I give a tip for those of you showing up early and on time. I appreciate that you do. I come here pretty much every business day to sit there and teach you sales training. And when you show up early and on time, it really helps because it pushes the word out to LinkedIn to remind other people, hey, we're starting. So my tip for you today for success and a thank you is from Stephen Covey's 7 Habits for Highly Effective People. I keep a card of his 7 habits, and I built it back in the 90s, I think, like 97, 98. That's how long I've been reading that book. And habit number 5 is seek first to understand, then to be understood. And this habit I really like because it applies to today's training in particular, right? We're going to be talking about federal agency spending and what's going to be going on as it relates to the Trump administration and agencies over the next 4 years. This is research. This is seeking to understand what's going on. What are going to be the priorities? What are the challenges they want to address, et cetera? And so Stephen Covey's habit about seek first to understand means don't look at something and just assume you know what's going on. Another way to say this is the way we think about maybe a doctor's visit. I don't want to walk in and have the doctor prescribe me a solution or medicine or the answer, the prescription to my problems when they haven't even diagnosed me. Seeking first to understand, then to be understood is first seeking to discuss their problems or goals, things they want to get accomplished in the next year, the next 4 years, and then to begin to talk about your solution and your offering, what you do. So that's just a quick tip for those of you showing up early and on time. Thank you for doing that. Let me turn off some of my captions here. And if you didn't hear me say this, I'm getting a new screen here, a new setup here, and I'm going to be playing with different buttons. I might mess it up a little bit. So be my friend and help me get along through this, but I'll deliver some really good training. So do me a favor, if you understand that tip I just did, and you understand that buyers are the ones who have that the challenges and the goals we want to understand, just put buyers rock into the chat. Let me know you're out there and you hear it, and that's what we're going to get started on. Buyers rock in the chat. With each new presidential administration, I get asked this question, and I've been doing this a long time, so I get asked this question more often than I would like to think. But I get this question about how will federal contract spending be in the new administration? How will it be impacted? How will we be impacted, right? How will my business be impacted? Will the contract spending, those dollars that are going to government contractors, will that increase or decrease, right? Back in the COVID time, we heard a lot about the federal budget and things shot up into the trillions, et cetera. That's not contract dollars. Contract dollars are pretty steady for the most part, as we'll talk about. And that's the part I want to talk about, not federal spending, but contract dollars for us government contractors. And so the first answer to will spending go up or down, well, it's kind of a hit or miss, and we'll figure that out. But we can look at the data and see what that tells us. In order to kind of predict the future, we can look at the past. Administrations change every 4 or 8 years, depending on whether the president has 1 or 2 terms in there. And every administration change, even sometimes with the same president, the same president, if they go 4 years and then 8 years, they look at the next 4 years and they might even have different priorities that are going into that. And so in a few months, the Trump administration will begin. And the good news is, from my perspective, as a government contractor, right, as a small business owner, is that the administration, it doesn't matter which one is coming in, they all spend. From a business perspective, they all spend. We just need to understand where and how they spend that money. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. I did an interview in Washington, D.C. a few years back it was in Washington, D.C. on ABC, and it was during the first Trump administration. And I remember that interview really well because it was about the Hub Zone program. And I was in there talking about the Hub Zone and all the things we were doing in the GovCon chamber to really improve that program and to help Hub Zone businesses succeed. And the last question the reporter asked me was, Well, hey, President Trump is sending forward or pushing forward a budget. How do you think that budget is going to impact the small business world, or how do you think that budget is going to impact the country or something? I'm like, first off, whoa, slow down. I'm in the government contracting space. I'm not here to speak for the whole country, but from a small business perspective, and I said this a minute ago, right? Administration spend. It's our job to figure where that spending is going to happen, and that's what we're going to drive into. So hopefully I'm sharing my slides correctly. I'm trying something new. So those of you who have been around for a while, let me know what you think. But we're going to start diving into federal contract spending in 2025, in particular under the President-elect Trump's administration. I'm going to cover down in 4 different areas in today's session. First thing I want to cover is just looking at the data. I always say data and evidence is so powerful, right? I can go back and look, and I don't have to ask a lot of questions of somebody else about what will happen. I can look at what did happen, and that tends to give me a good understanding. So that first bullet that we're going to cover down on is 2016 versus the 2016 was pre-Trump administration, and then the first Trump administration came in. And so I want to cover on that. And then I want to talk about decreases and increases. So really looking at the budget and seeing areas, and I want to give you my opinions, and I really want to stress this. It's educated opinions, right? I'm giving this advice to my customers. It's what advice I give myself. But as I share it with you, I clearly understand it's an opinion, an observation of where I see the spending is going to decrease in the federal government and where I see it increasing. The reason I'm doing these two is I want to give you ideas and thoughts to go explore yourself for your own company, right? You have your own priorities, you have your own things that you're selling, but I want you to see what I'm thinking so that you can go in and explore that further. I'm not here to have a discussion so much as get you started on how to do that, which is the last bullet, this whole idea of how do you do research, right? How can you go out there and research the spending beyond what I'm doing today? So that's what we're going to cover down in today's training. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonough. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber and co-founder of GovCon in a Box. I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I provide tools for success in the federal market, tips for success in the federal market. That's what the chamber is. The GovCon in a Box is the matching tools. I'm still learning my message there. Since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow a process A to Z, we're going to have repeatable, predictable results. And this is what I want for you. If you haven't already subscribed to our newsletter, Government Contracting Success Newsletter, go ahead and subscribe to that. We constantly are putting out good information. It's why we keep growing. Good information about how to succeed in the federal market. We'll certainly be taking this type of training and rewrapping it into a newsletter. The most recent article, for those of you who are 8A small businesses, is we took a lot of our previous training around how do you succeed as an 8A and put it into the newsletter article. So I did that yesterday, I think. Go check that out. The last thing on this page, I just want to let you know about tomorrow's training. It's Best Federal Agencies in 2025 for GovCons in a Trump administration. So today is about spending. Tomorrow's, and you'll see this again in a second, tomorrow's about thinking about the actual agencies that are in there. I try to separate them out. I wanted to congratulate Bay Infotech. They just hit the 100 club, and congratulations to all the other 100 clubs in the companies in the 100 club. This is based on your federal visibility score in govconinabox.com. If you go there, you will see a tool that we built. It's a free tool, and it analyzes how visible you are to federal buyers in the tools that they look in. If you're not visible to federal buyers, then how can they find you when they want to buy from you? There's over 360,000 small businesses in the federal market. Only 100 of them are fully visible. Something as simple as your capability statement. Is it there when the buyers are looking? Is it there where they're looking? So congratulations to Bay Infotech and all the other companies that are in there. I encourage you again to go to govconinabox.com to check out your score. I just wanted to point out today's training is about federal contract spending. I'm going to do 3 days of training around the Trump administration spending, things like that in the executive branch. And so tomorrow I'll be doing best agencies for government contractors in 2025 and best agencies based on kind of that increase and decrease in spending we'll talk about today. And then I'm going to wrap up on Thursday because I'm taking Friday off. I'm going to wrap up on Thursday with how to plan for success in the new administration. So if 1 and 2 are about kind of researching and understanding, 3 is about looking at your company and going, what can we do to plan for success in 2025 with the new presidential administration coming in? So make sure you register for those. Love to have you in there. And then we already have our next virtual networking events scheduled for November 25th. So that's a Monday at noon. Love to have you in there. We already have people registering. You can just go to govconinAbox.com/networking, or you can just go straight into LinkedIn and you'll see it in there on my profile. So let's get started talking about when you think about the Trump administration 2025, I like to go back and look at the Trump administration 2017. I was actually a government contractor. If you don't know this, I spent 20 years as a small business government contractor. And in 2016 and 2017, President Obama and President Trump, I had a contract, 2 contracts, one with DOD and one with the White House. Both of them were to support the president. And so 2016 and 2017, I had a really interesting observation of the administration, right? And if I just back up for 1 second and make sure we're all on the same page, when you think about the President of the United States, they're in charge of the entire executive branch. And so every single agency you can think of falls under direct control of the President of the United States. I basically look at the president as the CEO of a company called the United States Executive Branch, right? So DOD, DHS, Department of Veterans Affairs, HHS, all of these people fall under the President of the United States, under their control in the executive branch. And so I wanted to look at the spending. When you think about contract dollars, that's primarily where we're talking about. The other 2 branches spend, but like a fraction. A teeny fraction. But here, what I wanted to show you was as you come in and look at the spending from when President Obama's last year, 2016, was going on, to the Trump administration for the next 3 years. And I didn't go too much further at the moment because I wanted to avoid the COVID bump in 2020 that kind of skews these bars. But basically these bars, if you just look at it from 2014, 2013, and just out to 2024, it just keeps going up. There's a slight dip in 2021, and that's pretty much because we had an excessive amount of spending in 2020 that dropped in 2021. And that's normal, right? So there's a little bit of kind of bumping in there. But if you look here and you see the $463 billion in one presidential administration's last year, and then you see $501 billion, and you see it going up, this just simple thing is telling me when President Trump came in the last time with all the different agenda items he might have and priorities, the spending stays. And this is something you can look at year over year over year. Whether they do a good job at getting set aside to women-owned small business, that's a separate story. But whether the federal government spends money in contracting, that pretty much happens. And that's the good part. The challenge for us is to figure out where is that money being spent that aligns with what we sell to the federal government. So hopefully that makes sense. I'll show you in a few slides how to actually do this yourself, how to go find some of that information. Okay, so I wanted to go through, and it's really important that you understand these are my observations of what President-elect Trump is communicating out to us that are his priorities, right? And the together with the Republican priorities, because there is kind of that's who will basically be leading the executive branch for at least the next 2, if not the next 4 years. But 2025 is what we care about. None of these things I'm about to say are fact. I'm not trying to have any kind of debate with anybody, but me personally, when I look at my business and when I look at my customers and I'm advising them, hey, where do we go? What opportunities do we look at? These are some things that are out there. So just starting with bullet number 1, right? There is this expectation in a Trump administration that the Department of Education's budget might decrease. It might decrease in multiple ways. For example, and I don't know a lot about the Department of Education, but spending on loans, right? Loans and grants and things like that. And spending in general. So when you think about loans, you might think about students. When you think about grants, you might think about school systems or counties, et cetera. And so when I look at that, and you think about who you are and what you sell, especially if you're in any kind of professional services, that all aligns. If we decrease the amount of, and I'm using this one as an example for the rest, but if you see a decrease in spending on, let's say, grants to school systems all across the country, well, if there's a decrease in that, they obviously are impacted. but also at the department level, there's less need to administer that activity. So there's this whole upstream. So I want to put it in your head to look at that kind of area and think about it. EPA is another one. So from the environmental standpoint, this one's a big one for you to pay attention to. If you're in the environmental side, or if you're in EPA in particular, in 2017, I think literally in the first day, President Trump then back in 27 put a pause on contract dollars. So go research that. Research the impact of different presidential terms and to what you sell. Some things you might sell, for example, I sold SharePoint in my last business, and my one before that was network engineering. I was everywhere, and it wasn't really tied to the political agendas of a president, but it was tied to how much money was available. Some of these agencies are going to have budget cuts by 10%, let's say, or 20%. And that's a pretty aggressive 20%, but they're going to have these things. So think about that. Number three, this is another one that I'm observing because it really applies to a lot of companies that I work with. There is some suggestion, right? I'm trying to use balanced words here. Some suggestion of the Trump administration wanting to move some headquarters in federal agencies out of the DC area to other places. An example is I think it was BLM, the Bureau of Land Management. I think it was them. Their headquarters was moved out in the first Trump administration out of DC to Colorado. Well, when that happens, there's a decrease in spending here. There's also maybe a decrease in what's going on with personnel who work there. These are things for you to observe, right? Again, I'm not here to have the conversation. I'm here to look at it and go, well, how will it impact your business? How do we protect your business? And how do we make sure we're gearing towards the right things? If you are in real estate, though, there's a lot of relocation that might increase in spending that you can help. Travel, just something as simple as the government paying for employees to travel. Overseas aid. So this is a big one. This is one that President-elect Trump has made pretty clear, right? There's this idea of reducing the amount of money that's being spent overseas and looking, frankly, to other companies to spend more and the United States spend less. When that happens, that impacts all sorts of stuff at the State Department, at USAID. I think the State Department had a significant reduction in personnel back in the first Trump administration. So these are things to pay attention to. If you're knocking on the door of agencies like State, USAID, USAID and education, if you're knocking on those doors, there's things you need to be wary about, and you should talk with them and you should do your research in there. Something I'll talk about another day, but I just want to put in your head. You also want to be paying attention to whoever's coming in to a position. So an example is, I just heard that I think on the news that perhaps Senator Marco Rubio out of Florida might be the Secretary of State. If that happens, then I would be following him to try to learn, what is he saying? What is he saying now, right? What's he saying in last month and this month coming forward? Those are clues for me to be able to plan. Renewable energy is a big one for the Trump administration. There'll be kind of a less investment in that, and that's DOE. Public housing subsidies. This is something else. In HUD, this is a big deal. You're talking about billions of dollars that perhaps might be reduced. And the reason that's ties to my head around contracting, government contracting, is because of the services that go to support pushing that money out to wherever it's going. So those kind of things. And then the last one I have here is an example. And these are things you could do your own research on and really understand it down to a true fact, not just me saying it, but you taking the time to research. But I put tax enforcement. That might not be the right word, but basically the IRS got a significant budget increase under the Biden administration, and under the Trump administration, there's pretty much a stated goal to reduce that. And so understanding that, and a lot of it is around IRS agents or whatever they're called, right? But the reason it ties back to me as an IT guy is if they're reducing the need or the budget on the number of people they're hiring, for example, and they're not going to go up above 100,000 employees, well, then do they really need me for SharePoint or network engineering support services? Understanding where that fits. Tomorrow, I'm going to be trying to come at this from an angle of which agencies would I be going to that I think pretty clearly are going to have money coming at them. So these are decreases in spending. This is, and this is, again, my opinion, more importantly, my observation. It's less my opinion. And through my research, this is what I'm observing and what I'm communicating to myself and to my customers, saying, hey, These are the ones that seem like a risk to me from a government contracting pipeline perspective. And so I want to be paying attention to where the money might be increasing. So let's talk about that. Okay, so going forward into the Trump administration for 2025, President-elect Trump has communicated some pretty clear priorities that he has and that he has for his administration. And so I'm defining these as areas that we can expect an increase in spending. Certainly a stabilization in spending, if not that increase that I'm talking about. And so again, just to make sure this is clear, is these are my observations as I'm looking at this. First off, DoD is definitely going to have an increase in spending. If you take the time to seek first to understand, then to be understood, right? If we think about just the administration, the Trump administration coming in 2025, for government contractors, that is our customer. I need to seek to understand what are their goals, what are their challenges, what are their priorities. And by doing that, I can understand and I can listen to what they're saying and begin to predict where opportunities might come to me for my pipeline. So an example, or the first one is Department of Defense. Definitely the spending is going to go up. The President-elect Trump has made it very clear on the power of American military and how that helps us around the world and our position in his opinion. And so he'll be doing stuff that aligns with that. That's a big one. Another one that I didn't put on here that I should have put on here, I don't know why, is NASA, right? There's this twofold thing, right? The potential of privatization of NASA, which might put it on the decrease slide. But then there's also this idea of an increase in space exploration and the discussion around there. And so I will be observing that because some of my customers are in NASA. What does that mean for them? Is there going to be increased opportunities over the next year, right? And I'm looking at the next year and 4 years because the administration runs a 4-year period, 2025, 6, 7, and 8. The next one, so there's a lot around immigration, there's a lot of discussions. And for us government contractors, something that needs to be, when you think about opportunities, is CBP, right? Border security is a very clear stated goal of President-elect Trump. Knowing that and knowing that he wants to hire 10,000 plus new border agents, right? If I'm a government contractor and I'm looking for opportunities around maybe the recruiting process, how does that happen? CBP, Customs and Border Protection, has made it very clear that even though President-elect Trump has suggested like $10,000 bonus for hiring bonuses or retention bonuses, CBP is saying, hey, we've got this huge challenge with retention. Well, if you're a retention company and you can help them figure it out, well, there's increase in there. So there's all this stuff that's going to come around there, right? And again, I'm making observations here. This is not about judgment anywhere. It's looking at where opportunities are going to come. And if I'm a government contractor selling to the federal government, I'm looking around to build my business and to be able to support my employees. So border security and immigration, the next one, kind of go hand in hand. And there is a very stated, big stated goal around immigration, whatever that entails. But that tells me instantly I need to be paying attention to at least in DHS, USCIS, and ICE. And so these are kind of the two sister agencies that work together with CBP. The interesting thing, which I'm still trying to figure out, is it looks like they're trying to scale down DHS. This is a little bit of a stated, I don't want to say goal, that's too strong, but as something that they're looking into, the Trump administration is scaling down DHS. But the idea around border security and immigration is going to scale out those three agencies. So I'm going to dig into that. I'm going to see, am I going to support those agencies? And if I am, where are those opportunities coming out? But guaranteed there's going to be an increase in spending there. Infrastructure is another one. I think this one kind of went with both administrations. And so there should be continuation. But this execution on getting money being spent out there, I can't remember how much is in the Infrastructure Act, which, maybe somebody will put it in there. But the spending on infrastructure is probably going to go up. So if you're in the construction side, if you're in the program project management around these major initiatives, there's all sorts of activity that go into the infrastructure build, right? You might be a general contractor who can make a 50-mile road happen. You might be a person who's doing the paving or the excavatings or whatever. I pretty much ran out of all the construction examples, but that's something there that I'd be looking at. Domestic manufacturing is a huge one that President-elect Trump is talking about, and really, I think a lot of people are talking about this, bringing back a lot of our manufacturing into our border, into America, right? And to be able to create these capabilities. We've got somebody in our community who is a manufacturer who creates parts for the companies that sell the parts to the government. And literally over the weekend, I had the government reaching out to me asking if I could help them kind of navigate that supply chain. And so domestic manufacturing is going to rise. I know somebody who's been in our community since 2018, I think, which I appreciate her, Elizabeth in here. Shout out to Elizabeth. She's in that supply chain type world in domestic manufacturing. And so there might be this ramp up in understanding with DLA or the Navy or whoever, how is the administration, the Trump administration's focus on increase in domestic manufacturing, how's that going to impact your requirements coming out, the opportunities that I might be able to pursue. And then the last one, this is a lot more about my opinion than pure observation, but staff augmentation. I think there might be a significant increase in this because I believe that there's going to be hiring freezes depending on what Trump administration will be trying to do with the budget and manage the money that we have, right? And so there'll be these hiring freezes that happen, but sometimes there's still a need. And so for me, I would be looking at that, thinking to myself, can I get in there and talk about, like, if you can't hire somebody to come in full-time federal employee, could you use our services as a surge while you're waiting for that? And then I mentioned earlier about relocation. There might be relocation of offices and headquarters out of the DC, Maryland, Virginia area somewhere else. Well, that's going to require all sorts of relocation activity, including potentially staff augmentation. If people aren't willing to move, but they need to stand up the office, they might need temporary, 1-2 surge support on really skilled staff. Okay, the last thing I want to share, because I'm running out of time, is how you can do this research on your own. First off, read and read a lot. Don't read one source, but read multiple sources. In particular, begin to follow the Trump administration leaders that are being introduced to us. And that's very public information that you can begin to see. President Trump is announcing this kind of steadily between now and in January, when he is brought into office on January 20th. And so you want to do this research yourself out there, understanding who are going to be the leaders that you should be paying attention to and hearing their priorities and their goals. But also just go to USA Spending. I did this one right here as an example, and you can see I looked at recruiting, which was an interesting one. I was just picking a word. And it was interesting to see how in 2016, it was like almost 200 million in spending. And then the very next year in the Trump administration, recruiting dropped, and then it dropped further in 2018. Now, if I was a recruiting firm, I'd dig further in and go, why? Like, let me go look at the contracts. Which contracts were they? What? Like, how is that possible? And then it started coming back up in 2019. And so I would be looking at that. I would encourage you to do the same thing on what you sell, so that you can begin to understand what was the first Trump administration like, to give you signals about what the second one's going to be like for you as a government contractor. Here's what I want you to remember, besides the fact that I got training tomorrow, and make sure you sign up for it, is first off, contracts are going to keep flowing. The data shows us that it doesn't matter which president's in office, contracts are going to flow. And finding the contracts that are best for your company is kind of the challenge before you in November, December, as you're preparing for 2025. All administrations spend, right? It doesn't matter which administration comes in, they all spend. It's just on what they spend on. And the last thing I want you to really understand, and this is very important, be proactive to understand spending. Don't get to January and start thinking about your January sales pipeline. You should be thinking about that now. Yes, celebrate Thanksgiving, but don't take the whole month of November to celebrate Thanksgiving, right? So be proactive, understand the spending, go to USA Spending in there. If you're in the workshop already and you want me to reach out to you and talk to you about this in your company, I'm happy to schedule a call to do that if you're already in our workshop. And actually, even if you were a previous customer, just reach out to me. If you're interested in the BD Accelerator workshop, this is where we help you execute on the training that I do every day. Then just put workshop in the chat and I'll follow back up with you. One of us will follow back up with you and talk to you about the workshop. But keep in mind, it's for companies that are doing 1 or 2 million plus. I need you to be making money already so that you kind of already understand the process and you can afford us when we get there. Otherwise, just do the free training. That's why I do this. As you go through your day and your week, just remember, government contracting, It is not a secret. It's just a process. I will see you in the next training.